Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming in the lower left-hand side, the blue Protoss from Korea, it's sOs!
And on the right top side of Blue Shift, we're looking at the main base of our Korean Protoss. It is Stats.
Stats, the absolute unbreakable. He's looked so good at this BlizzCon. We have not seen much in the way of a weakness out of him just yet. Going up against sOs, who's been a bit of a different story. He's tripped, he's fallen, he's gotten back up, and he's punched back, taking out one of the absolute favorites for the entire tournament in Maru. And in this PvP, it's a bit of a style battle for these two, right? Like sOs is going to be the one that'll take a little bit more risks. We did see his PvP earlier in the tournament as well as Stats, as you pointed out on that couch. And Stats is looking to just outplay his opponent.
Yeah, I love what Johan said there. You can often scout by being aggressive, as long as you're out there on the map. And if there is one thing that Stats has truly impressed me with this weekend, it's with how mobile and how dynamic his gameplay has looked. He's always out on the map, and sometimes it feels more like bluffing. He's pretending that he wants to attack, and he's like, look at my big army. And it's like, actually, that army is not that big at all. But that's something we see, and that's not something his opponents always see. And he has so much going on at home. Of course, it is going to be very important for Stats here to be rock solid, but if there is one solid Protoss player out there, normally it is Stats. Couldn't agree more by what you said about their roads as well up to this point. Stats almost flawless, 7-1 sOs. He has lost series 2-0 very decisively, and even in this series that he won, he looked shaky, he dropped maps until yesterday where, well, he caused arguably the biggest upset of the entire year.
Yeah, absolutely. Maru being sent packing early like that. So far, very much so a mirror matchup in the way that their build orders have not diverged at all, looking up at that production tab. And that's not that uncommon. It's usually at about the tech path where you start to see that kind of difference. So one of the things that I really liked we saw in that sOs series, I believe it was the use of the second pylon being put outside the base, either for a straight-up proxy or for misinformation. And that's going to be the kind of little stuff you look for here. But so far, none of those shenanigans. It's all very normal this far.
I definitely expect a lot of Stargate play in this best of 5.
Okay.
Maybe arguably from both sides, but especially Stats. I think he truly loves his Stargate, because Stargates are slow and steady. They keep track of your opponent's play. You're going to be safe at home the majority of the time. He picked up the probe, and now we'll see tech builders go down. sOs immediately drops the robotics facility, and let's see what Stats decides to do. So far, nothing yet.
He's moving out to expand.
Wow, okay,
which
that's
is
risky.
It's a bit risky, especially since that robo typically signifies like a third gate, sometimes a fourth gate, and then that really kind of warp prism initiated aggression, and that would be a really, really tough hold for Stats.
Yeah, and this game is going to be very fun already, guys, because obviously sOs is going to have the possibility to apply a lot of pressure on the other side of the map, and then it comes down to what Stats decides to do. Is he going to sacrifice the Nexus? Can he cancel the Nexus in time? Or is he going to try to hold his ground and fight on the low ground? But if he does that, Jeff, against the 3-gate and the Warp Prism, that's going to be very tough, even for someone like Stats.
And you can see 2 shield batters actually going up in production, and we know that well, that just got weird. Okay, so I'm going to stop even talking about what I was talking about. It's going to be a robo for Stats, but a robotics bay for sOs. Now, Kevin, is it Warp Prism speed? Is this a disruptor thing? I mean, obviously you're guessing, but where do you want this to go?
Arguably both, but I definitely think disruptors at first. Colossus would make no sense here at all. Colossus are simply not strong enough. That's a lot of adapts. And obviously what these adapts bring to Stats is, once again, this is what he's doing all weekend long. He's posturing himself strong in the middle of the map. If you ignore it, you can take a lot of damage at home. But obviously if you keep chasing these shades, you're not getting much done either.
Yeah.
But does Stats have a sentry or anything that he can scout with? Okay, he does have the sentry, it's just waiting for energy. He needs to pick up on the fact that there is a robotics bay being built, because guys, it's not common to see at this level disruptors this quickly.
And he at least just now scouts that there is no additional Nexus, so he knows he's facing something aggressive. What it is, he does not know. And like you said, that sentry's late, so the hallucination's not going to come anytime terribly soon. So Stats is on the defensive right now. He doesn't know what's coming his way. Even the number of gateway units he's scouted so far is not really telling.
I must say, it is technically very smart by sOs to go disruptive here. You look at the army of Stats, he's got a lot of adapts. Adapts are not good against disruptors at all, because they like to clump up. They're range units too. And then there are sentries in the mix, which are also very bad against disruptors. So obviously Stats, I don't think he's expecting this just yet. Even the Immortals are not going to be great. Sure, in a straight-up fight they will be, as the first adapts start picking up a couple of probes. Okay, this is very nice though for Stats.
He captures a couple units, and actually they emerge fairly unscathed. I think it was just about 1 Stalker that died there, but it really could have been a whole lot worse. And the first Disruptor is going to come rolling on up over here.
More sentries though for stats, and I don't know if sentries are the units that you want. I think you want to have stalkers and you want to create a concave for yourself. You want to make sure that these Purifying Novas won't explode in the middle of your army.
And here comes the first shot. It's hunting down. It actually hits the Immortals, which is about as good as it gets if you are stats. They can tank that damage for now, and now he knows the game's afoot. He's scouted there's no Nexus. He sees the army, he sees its disruptors, and he's going to get his own War Prism out here, and that's going to be a key unit.
Yep, because the War Prism is not only strong offensively, but obviously defensively as well. You can start microing your own units. You will end up losing one Immortal right before the Prism shows up, but I still think so far it's so good. The Force Field goes down as well. Micro being displayed here on both sides.
Yes, he's going to drop down that one Disruptor again. It's just about off cooldown, and it can get a shot off here. A really dangerous game of cat and mouse.
Oh, Disruptor number 2 is on the right side. I think he's going to try to flank this army.
And there's the shot. It hits 2 of the 4 sentries. Again, not the biggest of hits. And the Disruptor's actually going to die before it gets picked up. That's about half the firepower sOs has available. He's going to give chase here, though. His next Disruptor shot's got to be big. He fires off, but it actually whiffs for the most part. Wow. And now the counterattack from stats. There's nothing here.
Wow, he's going to be able to kill a lot of probes on the other side of the map, but will he be able to stabilize at home? Maybe he should just try to get these units into his main base, and I think that's what he's going to try to do real soon. Use that Prism, get back to your main, maybe get a sentry, because he's killing an insane amount of probes on the other side of the map.
Oh my god, he saves even that last Stalker. The Immortal doing so much damage out there, but everything inside the main.
16.
I mean, it's nothing. He's down to 8 workers. He's got to win right here. The War Prism doing so much work. The Immortals getting to wail away for free on this mostly Stalker army. You can have your Disruptor, but if you've got nothing to support it, you ain't doing much. It whiffs again with the fancy footwork. Stats, it's going to push back. He's up a huge amount of workers. He's just down a little bit in army.
That is so sick. What a hold by stats. What micro out of stats so far. Just barely made a single mistake. Picked up the Immortals over and over again. The counterattack. Which madman would counterattack there when there is a one-base Protoss trying to attack you, all-inning you with Disruptors? Stats is showing us why we always praise him for his defensive abilities.
And Roddy, I love it because those the Adepts would not do much on this side of the map, but as a counterattack, it seems the War Prism actually does go down. The Disruptor gets shot before its Purifying Nova can go off, and that's going to be it as sOs is losing out on the entirety of his army. He's only got 11 workers behind this. There's no way he thinks he can go on. GG! Stats scores first blood.
Immortals living up to their name there. Truly immortal. Great, great defensive play there by Stats. Unreal, Jeff. That is so incredibly difficult. Especially the very first moment. That first Disruptor showing up. If you don't pay attention there and that Purifying Nova connects to the middle of your Adepts and Sentries, that's curtains. It's game over. But the defensive Prism was so smart. Without that Prism, he can never defend that. There's so much more micro potential in the units of sOs than there would be for Stats. But Stats just knew what he had to do. It felt like an awkward moment. That man did not feel out of place.
I want to draw a line on this thing here. You talked about in the middle of the game, but the idea of taking 6 Adepts and counterattacking them. Not only smart because they're not that great defensively, they'll probably just about die for free, but it's easy for us to say, yeah, of course, that's the great call, right? But you're game 1 on the top 4 in BlizzCon, facing sOs, one of the scariest opponents you can face, and you make that choice, and it's the deal breaker, right? Like if he just takes Purifying Novas, you can have all the fancy micro in the world, but eventually some of those connect, and you're gonna get whittled down. But because he counterattacked in that way, it might just have been the determining factor, and that was just huge to watch.
And you know what I loved as well is that even though Stats expanded, you know, people often think at the moment I have an expand, I actually need to start building workers as well. I need to start using that expand. No, Stats picked up on what was happening very quickly, and he's like, as long as I defend properly, as long as I survive and I don't take any damage, I'm always going to be ahead. I don't need to build any workers here, because if he would have built 5 or 6 extra probes, he wouldn't have enough to defend and he would have lost that game.
Absolutely amazing. It comes down to these small choices, and I have to say too, sOs got a little bit unlucky, right? Like a couple of those Purifying Nova shots, they killed like 2 out of 4 sentries, and there was no amazing micro. There was something that we can look to. It was just kind of the way the cards fell. Well, hey, we're in game number 2 here on Acid Plant in this best of 5 between the 2 best Protoss players on planet Earth. In the top left-hand side, needing your support to score back here, it's the blue Protoss sOs.
And on the right bottom side of Acid Plant, the man who's up 1-0. BlizzCon, make some noise for Stats.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but should Stats win this series, should Serral win this series, it would be a repeat of GSL versus the world, literally here at BlizzCon. It's funny though, because we're just like kind of cornered in with storylines, right? Like if sOs wins, he's going for his 3rd world championship, so we're actually pretty lucky here to have just such an amazing top 4. And already a little bit of difference here. So you see Stats scouting out at the bottom of the ramp there. That's because this map is not too terribly uncommon for a cannon rush. And if this map's not uncommon for it, sOs, he's got the gusto to say, I'm down 0-1 in this best of 5. I'll cannon rush you game 2, no problem. He's not doing it, but he could.
Now, Blue Shift definitely plays out a little bit different than Acid Plan. This map is quite a bit bigger, and there are some more different routes you have to take through the middle of the map as well to reach your opponent's main base or their natural expand. So, in general, you see some more, macro-based or strategies coming out of both sides. Obviously, sOs is always aggressive, but I think this map screams Stargate even more than a Blue Shift would do. We'll see. I think for Stats, Stargate would make a lot of sense here. For sOs, he might just expand, after 2 gates and just try to play a macro game like that.
Or he'll do anything, actually, with sOs. He can go anywhere from there. Otherwise, a fairly stock, normal opening from both players. Do you see them probe scouting here, and they're kind of remaining committed, wanting to see that tech path. Remember last game, sOs didn't drop his Robo until the probe was cleared out. That's a stylistic thing as well. Some Protoss players will absolutely show you the tech. It could be a Stargate or Robo. They say, I don't care, I'm going to get it down faster rather than earlier. But for now, it's Stalker and Sentry, which typically signifies the want to head towards an expand. It still could be a Stargate, but it's one of those two, generally speaking.
Yep, the main reason why is, of course, the Sentry A is very strong defensively, not so good on the other side of the map, but you also get access to that very quick scout. You can hallucinate a Phoenix, send it to the other side of the map, and then you have a pretty good idea of what you're going up against. Twilight Console, I believe, went down in the main base of Stats, and let's see.
They both do it, of course.
Okay. The funny thing is as well about Twilight is that there are so many follow-ups, right? Like, what does this mean? Are we going to see Blink Stalkers? Absolutely possible. But every now and then, you'll see a Dark Shrine opening as well coming out of players. And then they followed up. Charge used to be all the rage, but in this day and age, you see the Adepts really making a solid comeback again in this matchup. So even though they have the same tech building, this absolutely by no means that they're going to play an identical game.
And even now, as they both see they have that single Stalker, they can fill in the gap and say that's a Sentry, that's the other unit there. The follow-up is something that gets mixed in there. And Stats is going to go, they're both going to go Blink. It's exactly the same thing so far. That's not that uncommon in this matchup, but especially at the top tier of this level of play for both players. There are a lot of different openings. We're very fortunate with that in PvP right now, but at the same time, this would be your cookie cutter, Kevin, right? It's good against Robo, it's good against Stargate, you get that Nexus in there, so we're looking for a pretty healthy mid-game play here.
Yeah, for a while, this is what everybody used to do on almost every single map, but then at one point, people really started, that's a good pickoff, of course, that keeps his opponent in the dark. The power of Blink is that you can control the map, and the map is quite big, so there's a lot of space to control. On smaller maps, it's a little bit risky to go Blink, because then there are those weird Immortal Sentry War Prism timings that can really make your life very difficult. But on Acid Plan, you have to worry about that a little bit less, because this map is a lot bigger.
Yeah, and we do actually see that the Twilight Council was scouted there by that hallucination, and as Rotterdam pointed out, that's a one-way scout. Now, both players are very, very good, though, so even off of what they're seeing right now, they can almost certainly confirm what they're facing, but to be honest with you, being almost certain is still not the same as being absolutely certain. He gets a probe. Maybe he's going to lose an Adept here.
I think the other one is barely going to squeeze out, so not bad so far by sOs. Obviously, you don't want to give the Adepts away for nothing, but he forced Stats to build a pylon a couple of times, lost some resources. Now, in the end, he picked off a worker, and of course, he sees the amount of Stalkers that there are there. So I think overall, sOs is quite satisfied with what the Adepts have achieved. Sometimes you hope for more, you hope to get lucky. If you squeeze into the main base, you can straight up win the game almost at this level, but it wasn't too bad. Obviously, nobody was hoping for, but he can live with it.
Yeah, both the Adepts do get cleaned up there. It's just not the biggest of deals. As both these players are going to kind of find themselves trying to figure out where the other one wants to take it. The Forge even signifies, I would say, kind of another double down on the fact that I want to get my upgrades going. I want to get 5, 6, 7 gates, maybe a third Nexus, and start to kind of decide the game in that ballpark. You really don't go for Forge in this case if you're looking to hit some kind of critical timing attack, but the Observer coming out here as well for sOs. Stats just going to go ahead, drop a shield battery. Very passive play in game number 2.
Yeah, and they both took their gases quite early as well. I mean, actually the ones of sOs seem to be a little bit later. I just saw it on the minimap, but sOs is going here for charge, while Stats started mining gas a little bit earlier. I wonder if that means he wants to get into Archons faster, or maybe he goes for Resonating Glaive. So instead of making a bunch of Zealots, he could potentially go for Adepts, but we'll see where he takes it.
Yep, so far nothing to be shown off that Twilight Council just yet. Continuous Immortals coming off is also not that uncommon. They're not the best versus Zealots, but they just have such good range and they're such staunch units that oftentimes you find them kind of behind the front lines, dealing a lot of that damage. Now this slightly faster charge, I begin to ask Kevin, because there's 4 gateways going down as well, which is not the most, okay, there's charge and response from stats. And both players are now getting the scout off on each other. This doesn't have that much energy, but it will see. Okay, well, it didn't see the gateways themselves, but it saw a decent chunk of the base.
Exactly, it saw everything else, and obviously sOs is going to assume that a bunch of gateways will be wiped in, because, I mean, what else are you going to do, right? A random double Stargate in this phase in the game wouldn't make any sense in this matchup. Extra robos are just not that common. Every now and then there are very quick robo bay builds, but if since sOs is playing the way he does, I mean, it's a lot of gates on both sides, but they're mirroring each other. They're actually pretty much doing the exact same thing. Now, normally I favor stats in these kind of games because sOs is mostly about catching people off guard, surprising people, doing weird timing attacks. There is, of course, a War Prism on the way, so sOs is going to be the aggressor, but it's going to be very difficult to get a lot of damage done if your opponent is doing the exact same thing, but he's just defending.
Well, let's take a look at the units tab here, because I actually think there might be more Immortals. Just the one more out for stats. But as you said, the defensive position's huge, right? Shield barrier is a big deal. Of course, if you don't get the concave and you can kind of sandwich it against your own Nexus, you can get killed by a smaller army in that situation as well. Hello, sOs versus Zest. But the Stalkers here are going to patrol forward, and they're going to see a good chunk of that army, and they see a very similar composition. Obviously, you don't start warping in the Zealots until you're just about ready to go.
Yeah, I would love to see sOs expand here, Jeff. I think he wants to be aggressive. He didn't start +2 attacks yet. Obviously, Stats fired it up immediately, but it really feels that Stats is having a very solid read on this game. He's reading sOs like a book so far, and he's like, this is actually going fine. We're doing the exact same thing, but you seem to be very eager to attack me. I'm gonna wait, and this +2 could become very important.
Oh, if that finishes, of course, that'll be the tipping point for why the similar army compositions will just favor the guy with the better upgrade there. Army supplies are almost dead even. It's just 4 supply difference, and in a Protoss versus Protoss matchup, a lot of that's just a couple units. Yeah, Stalkers left inside the main. He's probably worried about a Warp Prism showing up there. But it looks like one observer will get sniped outside, so things are going dark for stats. He only does have the 1 shield battery at this natural, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean, he still is the defensive player, and in general, that should always go quite well for him. I mean, normally you would say there's no reason for sOs to attack here, but he still really wants to get the fight. He gets a couple of hits off. Both barriers activated. This might actually be the moment that Stats is like, you know what? Maybe we should fight.
It's going to have to be. Here they come the Archons getting pulled back off that front line, the Immortals as well, and so far, supplies favoring sOs as Stats fights into this, but he picks off the Warp Prism. There'll be no reinforcements here. He might have to choose to recall out, but if he does, that's giving up the attack, and he'll take some damage. He's going to fall backwards, and the decision to recall out of here is huge. He's only going to lose a couple of units, but man, the snipe on that Warp Prism just pulled the plug on his entire attack.
Yeah, very well done there. It looked like the battle was going rough for Stats. He was dropping in supply, and he had Archons a little bit later, or he had 1 less Archon, but he went for the Warp Prism. Stats immediately identified there, if I snipe that Warp Prism, you cannot reinforce to the battle. I will be able to. We both have 8 gateways. That is massive. I must say, I think that was very stubborn by sOs, though. If you scout everything that he has been scouting this game, obviously what he was hoping for is to strike Stats while Stats is going up to 3 bases, but Stats played it very safe, and then sOs had to make the call of saying, all right, I cannot attack here.
Speaking of stubborn, here we go. Stats says, I took the advantage earlier, so I must have the bigger army now. He's going to go up to the top of this ramp. Both players exchanging blow for blow here. Good Warp Prism micro from Stats, pulling off the key units from the front line. And it looks like he is going to have some insulation, and the higher Immortal and Archon count behind this is going to win the day. The Immortals and the Archons shoving forward. Here comes a couple of random probes. Not quite sure what that is. Can he go forward with this?
Yeah, a little bit of long distance mining, but there is no HP left on a couple of these Archons for sOs. He still has units, but the HP simply isn't there. The Immortals, the barriers are activated as well, and I think that sOs is running out of steam.
No shield battery, no chance. Stats takes the lead and does not look back. He marches forward and gets the decisive victory, going up 2-0 in this best of 5. And so far, it's been that rock-solid play. It's been defending the idea of what sOs has, and then returning the favor only better. Is he the answer?
I mean, once again, that was a little stubborn by sOs. He didn't have to do that. I understand his build. Nothing was weird about it. And it's very common that you make a Warp Prism, that you make that many gateway units, and then you want to attack your opponent while they're going up to 3 bases. But he was looking at Stats standing in his natural, and if you're both doing the exact same thing, why do you think it would be a good idea to attack your opponent? Like, there was, in no phase in the game, did sOs create an advantage for himself that would allow him to be successful with that attack. And of course, if he plays against a far inferior Protoss, he can sometimes steamroll guys. But someone like sOs, in a 100% of a mirror game up to that point, I don't think you can do that, Jeff.
No, I fully agree. I mean, he has the control of outside the natural as well, so it's not like he scouts a third or something and says, oh my god, you've been out mining me for a while, or I don't know. he looks at the army composition, like you said, there's no upgrade differential. They both had one attack upgrade at the time, so it is a little bit stubborn. That's something that can happen on these big stages, even for sOs, who's been on this big stage as well as countless others. But sometimes you're like, no, I'm doing a timing attack. If I pull back from here, I'll just be behind. It's unfortunate because we know that's not the case. He had a similar army. It was very close in size. He could have just gone and started his third, added some more Archons. He would have been fine.
The only downside there for sOs would have been that his +2 was quite a bit later. But that is something that you can overcome in PvP with a better engagement, with a little bit of
Shield
harass of a
batteries.
couple of adepts, or indeed defensive batteries. I don't think he had to make that attack, but he did.
Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to head into map number 3 here on Cerulean Falls. This guy needs your support. He wants to fight back here and make this close in the top right-hand side. It's the Blue Protoss sOs.
And in the left bottom side, we're looking at the main base of the best defensive Protoss in the world. He's up 2-0. BlizzCon, make some noise for Stats.
Stats has had such an impeccable year. We've said this before, but if it weren't for Maru, if it weren't for Serral, this very well could have been the year where we're talking about Stats and we're complaining about how good Protoss is and they're dominating everything. But thankfully, we had this Zerg and Terran that just hogged up all the trophies, so we don't have to deal with that.
Overall, what a moment this would be for Stats. If you look at his Wikipedia, it's incredibly long. It's achievement after achievement after achievement. But when you think of the most successful Protoss players in StarCraft 2 history, Stats is not the first guy you think of, because he makes deep runs, a lot of quarterfinals, but also an insane amount of top 4 finishes, more than any other Protoss in Legacy of the Void. But it doesn't happen that often that he lifts the trophy. Of course, he did win a couple of tournaments down the road, but for how good he is and how many deep runs he's had, he should have had more, Jeff.
I mean, that's the amazing thing about StarCraft, right? You can be these top-tier, consistent pros, which is a quality that I think is so underrated amongst ourselves as fans of this game. But unless you win the big one, I mean, think about sOs, right? Like, he has not had that many, high placings, but he's won these big tournaments. So he's getting these funny names like, $, $, and stuff like that, kind of just talking about how when he shows up, if the prize pool is around 100,000 or more, he's probably going to take it down. But this would have to be the biggest comeback of sOs's career at least. It's top 4 at BlizzCon. The winner of this wins life-changing money just placing in the top 2, ladies and gentlemen. So he needs to win 3 games in a row against Stats. I don't see it happening. That would be amazing.
3 games in a row against the man who is 9-1 so far at the WCS Global Finals and who has just played incredibly good. sOs is going to switch things up. He goes for the Stargate, and he even built that Stargate before the probe was taken down. I mean, obviously the Adepts were going to take care of it. It's Stargate against Stargate, Jeff.
Yeah.
You know I get a little excited when I see that.
You do like your Phoenixes, Roddy. It's a big map, so it kind of makes sense. The big kind of RNG moment here will be Oracle use coming off of this. A lot of players will go for that double Oracle and just try to win the game off the fact that it doesn't matter if you have a shield battery. If they show up, you're dead. Or they can go open up straight Phoenix and do like a 3-gate timing off of that. They can expand. So this game does enter into the randomness a little bit.
I feel sOs, it would make more sense to play Phoenixes here since he's opening up with 4 Adepts. I mean, of course you can go 4 Adepts and Oracle as well. And he decides to go for the Oracle. But at this point, he puts himself in a position where with all of his units, he needs to get damage done. He needs to somehow get in there.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. On paper, this is a doom scenario for sOs.
Isn't there even a shield battery in the mineral line? Or is that just
no, that's just the wall off.
Okay, it doesn't have that going for him just yet, at least.
But I mean, Phoenix against Oracle, right?
It's terrible.
In the old days, guys, there were moments where we would look at each other and be like, all right, wrap it up. This game is done. Now, Protoss players did become very smart.
Okay.
And
my God.
Okay, well, at this point, the surprise element is gone as well.
And it went over Adepts. So that, I mean, that's just execution. Like, he just did not pull it off of that. Stats has all the information. Whether or not he saw that is going to be another question. Is Phoenix have not moved out to intercept? Maybe he's hiding the fact that he still has them.
I think he's just going to try to suicide the Oracle. He wants to just get into the main base. We'll see. The Oracle is just going to go ahead and fly in. Now, it will still get a couple of workers. If it gets 3 or 4, which, I mean, it got, that's honestly not that bad, yeah. For one Oracle that was always going to go down, I think that's almost the best thing that sOs could have hoped for.
It is.
I like the way he did that.
Considering he got scouted, I absolutely agree. And that's why I actually was kind of surprised the Stats didn't say, oh, your Oracle's coming my way over the map. I even see where it is. Fan out. Because if you catch that Oracle and it has distance to travel to the mineral line, it dies for free. It gets off, nothing, basically. But as it is, like you said, sOs gets the damage in, and here's the next gambit he pulls. Oftentimes when it's Phoenix versus Phoenix, you don't want to be on the other side of the map, and a lot of times you'll add a second Stargate, you won't have any detection. This Twilight Council, I very likely am going to be seeing a Dark Shrine here in a second, or maybe he goes into Blink.
Yeah, going into Blink in a Phoenix against Phoenix game is not impossible, but in general it's very hard. I think it's a Dark Shrine, Jeff. Yeah, there we go as well.
Wow.
And it's double Stargate.
It is second Stargate.
On the side of Stats. So Stats is doing what most Protoss players would do in a Phoenix game. Now the biggest problem here for Stats is obviously there's no detection. The one thing that he does have, Jeff, is I think still that Sentry, right? That Sentry is still alive. So maybe the Sentry could get that magical scout off, or he can hallucinate a Phoenix and then try to take a Phoenix against Phoenix fight, feeling that he's going to have more anyway. But obviously it's very important, guys, that Stats needs to scout this within the next...
Oh, the probe. Oh my God, again.
He needs to scout this within the next 25 seconds of this game, or this game could end.
I mean, even if you scout a probe dropping a pylon over here, that too is a bit of a tell. And it is still Phoenix coming out for sOs, just to give you an idea of how weird this look is coming out from him.
It's a gamble, but it's a gamble.
Oh, there's hallucination. It's going across mid-map. That hallucination is such a big deal. And we are going to see if it scouts
anything. He sees the Stargate, it's not reaching. Oh, I love that. Did you see how quick that was?
Insta-robo.
He's like, I know that you're a world-class Protoss player. If we're playing Phoenix against Phoenix, you are chrono boosting Phoenixes. The moment he saw that Stargate wasn't building anything,
he didn't start an Oracle.
He canceled his Phoenix.
He did not start an Oracle, he started another Phoenix.
He does have the Robo. What he can always do is force field units outside of the natural. And
well, he sees it now. He's going to start an Oracle. He has to.
He can try to maybe force field this ramp. He starts double Oracle. Oh, the Sentry has no energy.
Stats is playing pretty good. No, they're going to get damage here, Kevin.
If a Dark Templar gets into the main base, it becomes a lot worse. Okay, it's a full wall off, and that still means that this is going to be painful, but at least the game is not going to end here.
And it's the double Oracle, too. If he just makes one Oracle, by the way, it only captures one of the Dark Templar, and he still takes absolutely massive damage. As it is, the DT's chasing over there, and the shield battery, pylon, excuse me, should die here in a second.
Oracle is out. Revelation will go down, so that's Dark Templar number 1. That's going to get picked off immediately. And that second Dark Templar is most likely going to get revealed here as well.
Oh my God.
Where's Oracle number 2?
It's right there, but...
Oh, there's one more DT sneaking into the natural, and that's the one that's going to hurt. There is an Observer coming out now as well, but a few more probes go down. But I must say, Stats has done a phenomenal job in hanging in there, Jeff. You look at the work account, he's still up 3 workers, he's got Immortals out on the way, and now he's like, hey, that was your turn, now it's my turn to kill a couple of these probes. And I think the Phoenixes of Stats should have a lot of potential.
Oh, and he even catches sOs's Phoenix out here trying to do something. They have the angle on it. They don't want to fight other Stalkers. There is Blink there, and they are going to be pushed back.
I think, okay, he wants to go for the main. You can always send the Oracles into the main. At home, is there a shield battery in the natural stats? Is there a shield battery in the natural stats?
Ooh. He's making a couple.
This is risky though, because the army of sOs seems to be a little bit stronger. Here is an Immortal. The Phoenix is going to sweep in as well.
And here come the Phoenix. We're going to have that conclusive fight here as Stats is trying to make a hold here. His army supply is significantly up. He wins the Phoenix battle because they're trying to pick up Stalkers, and now he's picking up the Stalkers as the Oracles go over to the other side of the map and kill 8 probes that cannot afford to be killed. sOs, you took out Maru. You had a good showing, but you faced the Shield of Ire as it chases him down mid-map, picks up these units, and Stats wants a date with Destiny as he's going to take a huge lead, 45 army supply to just the 18. He's up 10 workers. sOs is going to hold on because there's nowhere else to go.
Jeff,
I mean, what do you do?
The timing on that Immortal, the timing of his own Phoenixes coming home. I think sOs would have probably done better there if he didn't use Graviton Beam on his Phoenixes and just try to kind of buy time with his Phoenix Stalker against the Phoenixes from Stats. But I understand that he saw an opportunity, he went for it, but the opportunity actually wasn't there. The Immortal was about to walk down that ramp, and the Phoenixes did not go to his main base. No, the Phoenixes were there to help out in the defense, and Stats again with a phenomenal hold.
And sOs is going to try to make something happen here, but the Phoenix can just pick up units. That's it. GG's called out, and we have our first grand finalist in Stats. What a showing. 3-0 in this best of 5, and in each game, all the ideas sOs had, he says, nah, I know that one. I've got the timings, the defense, and he is able to put it together, Rod. He outsmarts the genius.
It doesn't happen often that you call something a flawless victory in the semifinals of the WCS 2018 finals, but I mean, what else can we say? He looked rock solid from the beginning to the end. Game 1 looked a little bit dicey. It looked like sOs caught him off guard with that unconventional build, but his reactions were spot on. The decision making is always on point, and Stats is just showing us that if you're on an even basis, you don't attack him, because we call him the best defensive Protoss in the world for a reason.
Hey, he's so amazing. We'll hear from him on stage now with Smix.
Thank you very much, guys. Congratulations, Stats. You've been to BlizzCon a few times already. This is your third one, but finally, you've made it to the grand finals here on the most important stage for the first time in your career. So please tell us what that means for you.
일단 축하드리고요. 블리즈컨에 온 지 벌써 이제 3번이나 됐는데 처음으로 드디어 결승까지 진출을 하셨어요. 그래서 느낌이 색다를 것 같은데 얘기해 주세요.
일단 정말 블리즈컨 3번이나 오면서 올 때마다 느낀 것은 결승 무대에 꼭 올라서서 우승하고 싶다는 생각을 정말 많이 했었는데 어떻게 보면은 길고 어떻게 보면 짧지만 3번 만에 이렇게 결승 무대에 올라가게 돼서 너무나도 기쁘고 이제 결승 무대에서 이제 우승하는 모습만 보여드릴 일만 남은 것 같아요.
So he says, the 3 times that I've made it to BlizzCon, I've always thought to myself, I want to make it to that final stage. So in some ways you can look at it and say it was a sort of a long road. Some ways you can say it was a short road to finally make it to the grand final stage at my 3rd BlizzCon. But now that I'm here, I really, really want to be able to win and become a champion on this stage. And this was such a convincing series from you, 3-0 over sOs. sOs is known for his sort of creative strategies, and therefore I feel like it must have been sort of difficult to prepare for him. So was that indeed the case?
이제 김유지 선수가 좀 전략적으로 좀 돋보이는 선수인데 그러므로 좀 준비하는 과정에서 좀 힘든 점이 있었나요?
안 그래도 제가 기존에 자신 있어 하는 플레이들을 좀 이번에는 버렸어요. 그래서 1세트, 2세트 때는 제가 우주관문 플레이를 좋아하는데 1, 2세트 때는 우주관문 플레이를 아예 버리고 다른 빌드로 이렇게 출발을 하면서 유진이가 어떻게 하나 이렇게 봤는데 제 우주관문 플레이를 좀 많이 맞춤을 이렇게 해온 것 같더라고요. 그래서 그런 것들이 저한테 유리하게 잘 작용하면서 3대 0으로 이렇게 이길 수 있었던 것 같아요.
So he says, the plan that I had coming in is I have a very specific style that I like to play in PvP. And so coming into preparation against sOs, I thought to myself, I'm going to throw away the normal style that I like to play. And going into games 1 and 2, I purposefully didn't do those styles. And I just kept an eye on how sOs was playing. And from what I saw, he had prepared for the original PvP style that I like to play. So I think because of the fact that I had switched things up from my side, it played out really, really well. And that's why I was able to take such a convincing 3-0 over him. And now for the first time in your career, you're in the grand finals here at BlizzCon. And if you want to become champion, you need to take down either Serral or Rogue. So do you want to take down Serral and get revenge on him for that 4-3 loss from GSL versus the World? Or do you want to take on Rogue, the current defending champion?
이제 우승자가 되려면 세랄 선수나 아니면 이병렬 선수를 만나야 되는데 혹시 세랄 선수에 복수하고 싶나요? 이제 GSL 대 월드에서 4-3으로 결승전에서 졌는데 아니면 반대로 작년에 우승자 했던 이병렬 선수를 만나고 싶나요?
정말 두 선수 다 정말 막강한 선수들이어가지고 정말 지금 당장은 그 4강전에만 이렇게 집중을 했기 때문에 어떤 선수가 이렇게 올라오면은 좋을까 이런 생각을 아예 못 해봤지만은 아무래도 이번 GSL 더 월드 때 제가 세랄 선수한테 당한 게 있으니까 세랄 선수가 올라왔으면 좋겠습니다.
So he says, honestly, I was spending all my energy channeling it into focusing for this round of 4. So I really wasn't really thinking about who I would play in the finals. But now that you're bringing that up, I think I would say Serral, because I do have that recent memory of losing to him in a close 4-3 series in GSL versus the World. So I'm hoping it'll be Serral that I face in the grand finals. We'll see if that is indeed the case. Congratulations again, Stats, on making it to his first grand finals at BlizzCon.
The Gladiator of Protoss has been decided heading into the Colosseum of the finals here for the WCS Global Finals, and his weapon of choice is the shield. Stats moves on into that grand final after a 3-0 smashing victory going up against sOs. Joining me, I have Todd, I have Artosis, and Nathanius. Gentlemen, that was not close, Nathanius.
No, Stats just completely demolished him. It was sick to watch. The defensive capabilities, his micromanagement, his control, it was awesome to see. The Warp Prism control, especially out of Stats, was just top notch, and he made sOs look like a clown on the main stage.
Yes, Artosis.
Yes. Well, you know what? We've known that Stats is the best Protoss in the world for quite some time. He continues to gather strength. He's one of those guys that just hasn't really been losing at all. In fact, has he lost a map yet? Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But you know what? I feel like there's a great quote that comes to mind from Albert Einstein.
Oh, okay.
And he once said that compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe. And I think that Stats is showing that.
Is it though? He didn't even say this. Todd, get on with it. Save us from him.
That was amazing the whole way from Stats. I love what he said in the post-game interview, that he prepared for what he thought sOs was going to do against his usual style, and it showed in every game. That first game was an absolute slugfest. Like, the micro from both players was just absolutely insane. We're all sitting at the edge of our seat backstage looking at it, and Stats was just incredible. The whole series, sOs, you know, maybe the stars didn't align nearly as much as he would have liked them to in the series, but it was really that game in particular, the Acid Plan game. Stats studied sOs so much, you can tell. He was like, oh, you like to attack into the expansion because it's hard to get a good position there on this map. I'll just go for the same 8 gates you're going to, match your numbers, and have enough army to not only hold on against your attack, but then counter-attack and finish you off after that. That was beautiful to deal.
Even moments where he's attacking up on the high ground, he'd already done enough damage to the army as well, with the added ambition of having that Warp Prism early on to just be able to push sOs back, Nathanius. It was really powerful. Yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying. His Stats really showed there what you can do when you have all those capabilities and that really good control with the Warp Prism, allowing you to scale everything in such a way. Great use of the Phoenix in this game, and just Stats just played everything perfectly. I'm not the resident PvP expert, but watching this was a treat.
No, it definitely was, Artosis. I mean, just kind of all jokes aside, everything looking at this, Stats coming into the grand final, it's as if he's kind of been on that cusp for so long of truly, I mean, he has already hit greatness, but it's that extra level that everyone always expected Stats to hit, and now he's just one step away.
Well, to truly have the career that you want to have as, you know, an esports athlete, you really do want to have that world championship title.
Yeah.
And if Stats can pick that up right now, I think this makes up for a lot of his losses in the past, because like everyone's been talking about, so many top fours, so many finals. Yeah. He is a champion, but he does not lift that trophy as often.
The Intel Extreme Masters, I think Katowice finals against TY comes to mind as well, where it was like so close, and then in the last game, TY with the brilliant play is like, oh, you want to burn Colossus quickly on 2 bases? I'll just go tank and Marines, push you and kill you, and then it works out. And it's like, it kind of felt like, you know, TY stole that moment, like he earned it, but it could have been one of the Stats' biggest moment ever. And now he's here, he's persisted through the adversity, and he came back stronger. And he's like I want to use another term than what you've been using, is like that consistent stock that keeps on rising and going up, and he never really goes down.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, really the big thing with Stats, and the funny thing to look at when you compare him to a lot of these other players, is he's really good, but he's not like the superstar guy where it's like, oh, when you think of sOs, you think of this like, badass guy who's good at the game, but also gets inside your head, and you feel the same way about Maru, and to an extent we see that spun around these other guys like Rogue, and you know, kind of comes in more like a Serral posture, where he is very good, and he is not known for coming out and making these outlandish statements, so people don't really give him enough attention until he gets to these phases of these tournaments.
He reminds me of Rain for like a long time, you know, like Rain was like the guy that you looked at as the guy that will sit back, play the most standard Protoss that you can play, and then it became really hard to keep on playing that style because it felt as if you needed to play more aggressive, but Stats is showing us that you can sit back, you can macro up until the time it's finally the moment for you to finally attack, and he does all of his timings just right, and it's just